What is your accidentally caught your spouse cheating horror story? Story 1. Not me, but a medical resident I met recently during a rotation. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. Super intelligent, hardworking, and training to be a trauma surgeon, yet as humble as they come. He had been married for 2 years to his wife. One night, he got off a 30-hour call early and headed home to surprise his wife with some flowers and her favorite dessert. It was the anniversary of the day they first met, only to find her in bed with a random guy. He was so exhausted and confused that he didn't know what to do, so he just left and went back to the hospital. I saw him at 5 a.m. sitting in the parking lot, hunched over and crying. He didn't even have his phone with him. He was just sitting there. Man, nothing breaks your heart more than seeing a grown man cry. It's not something you see often. We called his dad, and he came and picked him up. The guy ended up taking a leave from his residency. Turns out it wasn't the wife's first time sleeping around. I really hope he gets back on his feet. He's going to make an amazing physician. Story 2. A friend of mine was hanging out with some guys at a bar and went home to chill with them. He asked how they knew my girlfriend at the time. He realized she was a mutual friend at the bar. One of the guys said she was friends with benefits with his buddy. My friend was confused and mentioned that she was actually my girlfriend, to which the guy responded, "Oh, I hope you're not good enough friends to have to tell him." She was a stripper. Since there are no strip clubs in Tally, they come to you. I later found out that she had hooked up with a client and a frat guy, and she cheated on me a week before my birthday, after I had already bought us tickets for a cruise, which I didn't find out about until later. She had a weird relationship with her female best friend, who I eventually discovered she was also hooking up with, even though she called me crazy for suggesting something was going on. One day she invited me over to talk after getting her own place, and I found a condom wrapper in the bed. Later I learned that she had slept with her neighbor the first day she moved in. She also borrowed a ridiculous amount of money from me that she never paid back. Years later, she reached out when she moved to Texas after her new boyfriend beat her and got her evicted from her office. A friend of hers mentioned that she could get weed from her cousin, so she started hanging out with some fake thugs. One night she called me at 4 a.m. because they got pulled over. The guys didn't have licenses but had guns and drugs on them. She said she had to hide the drugs internally and wanted me to come get her. I told her to call a cab. A week later, she told me her grandpa wanted to see me. He lived nearby and still thought of me as the boyfriend. So I went by only to find her obviously messed up on pills, though no one else seemed to notice. She claimed the guys who got pulled over with her were giving her free pills out of sympathy. I told her that nothing in life is free and that she needed to stop hanging out with them. Of course, she insisted she knew what she was doing. A few days later, I got another call. She was screaming and crying, begging me to pick her up from some budget motel. Apparently, she kept hanging out with those guys and they drugged her, took turns with her, and then left. She said she passed out and woke up naked. I freaked out and told her to call the cops, but she just wanted me to take her to her car and smoke with her. I said I didn't have any and would just drive her home. During the drive, she lost it, screaming at the top of her lungs and punching the car windows while we were on the highway. Story 3. I was at Disney with our kids on day 2 of a 7-day family trip that her father had been talking about for around 7 years. When the kids were born, her parents told us they were going to take us all to Disney when the kids turned 7. 7 years later, it finally happened. At that point, we'd been together for over a decade. Great job, house, a bunch of kids, the full-on 100% honest-to-goodness American dream. Life was grand until I picked up her phone to set an alarm on the second night of our once-in-a-lifetime family vacation. There were so many texts. I couldn't believe it. I remember actually wanting to hurt her and had to leave the room. I immediately called the number, and some random guy answered with a sleepy, "Hello, darling. I'm glad to hear from you." I felt like dying. The sense of unreality was overwhelming. It was like I just switched to a dark timeline. All I could think was, "Wow, from this point on, everything I have known about my life is going to change." Story 4. Not my story, but a friend's. Early 2000s, my friend's husband was deployed to Iraq. They had a 10-year-old son and a happy marriage. One day while he was deployed, I was at home when another friend called and screaming, "Holy shit, turn on the news right now." I turned it on to see a human interest story about a fundraiser at a high school 30 miles away. They were doing Relay for Life or something similar. And as a surprise to one of the participants, they had her husband and father of her 2 grade school children do a video call from Iraq. broadcasting it on the football jumbotron. There on the local news was my friend's husband, telling another woman and 2 kids how much he loved them and couldn't wait to get back home. The news painted him as a great guy. That night, our group of friends gathered to discuss how we would break the news to her. I was nominated, so the next day I sat her down and told her what we saw. She called the news station, and they let her come in to watch the story, apologizing profusely. The ending wasn't great. She confronted him, they started divorce proceedings, and he went on to legally marry the other woman, mostly ignoring his son from the first marriage. Story 5. I had my suspicions for a few months but had no evidence. My ex lived about 40 miles from me, and we were 18. We had dated and gone to high school together for 3 years. She would come to the city on weekends to spend time with me. I knew she had another group of friends in her town, some of whom were guys, but it didn't bother me. One night I woke up and messaged her on Facebook, only to notice she had been tagged in a photo with one of her friends. He was holding her up and kissing her. It was his new profile picture. I messaged the guy and calmly asked what was going on. He responded immediately, confused. We agreed to meet for coffee the next morning while my ex was over. The look on her face was priceless when she saw him walk in and sit beside me. She begged for our forgiveness and claimed she loved us both. It turned out it had been going on for 7 months. Every time she left my place on weekends, she was going back to him for the rest of the week. Now, me and the other guy are best friends and share a house with my fiancé and his girlfriend. Story 6. One day, my husband was getting ready for work, and I saw him packing his GoPro case to take with him. I thought, that's weird. Why would he take it to work? So, when he jumped into the shower, I swapped his GoPro with mine, planning to check the files after he left. My suspicions were already on alert since he had recently taken a guys-only trip to the Philippines. I fired up the camera and found 3 videos. There he was, in all his glory, barebacking a Filipino prostitute, looking and posing for the camera like he thought he was some kind of porn star. I was absolutely enraged, but at the same time, seeing him act like that was almost comical. Story 7. I met this girl working the late shift at a drugstore. We had flirted a few times, exchanged numbers, and eventually started sleeping together. After a few weeks, she invited me out to a little dive bar on the north side of the city that she liked. We spent the night dancing, drinking, and chatting with people she knew. At some point, a guy came up to me and said, "Great to meet you finally. Congratulations on the engagement." I laughed, a bit confused, and asked, "What are you talking about?" The guy looked at me, puzzled, and said, "You're here with Corey. It's Paul, right?" I raised an eyebrow and pointed to myself, saying, "Nah, man, name's Kyle." We just stared at each other as we both began to piece together what was happening. It turned out that Corey was engaged to a guy named Paul, and I was the other guy. Paul worked out of town for weeks at a time. You could practically see the realization ripple through the small bar, completely changing the atmosphere. We left shortly after. She had brought me, the guy she was cheating with, to her favorite bar, a place filled with people who knew her well enough to know she was engaged to Paul, not Kyle. I never saw her again after that. According to Facebook, Paul and Corey are now married. Story 8. Things had been a bit shaky between us. I was working a lot and usually too drained to go out and be social when she wanted to meet up with friends, so I often stayed home. For Valentine's Day, I wanted to do something special for her, so I texted her friend to see if there was something she might have mentioned wanting to do. While waiting for a reply, I was in another room when I saw her phone buzz with her friend's name on the screen. The number below the name didn't match the one I had just texted. There are a few times in my life I felt my blood go that cold. I called the number from my own phone, and it rang and rang before going to voicemail. Needless to say, it was the other guy. When I confronted her, she admitted she had been planning to leave and had a bag packed just in case I found out. She had no intention of working things out. A month later, she moved out. I made a decision then. I could let this break me, or I could choose to be happy and open to new relationships. I chose happiness. Since then, I've remarried and now have 2 beautiful boys with my amazing wife. No matter how shy and painful these situations are, there's always the possibility of happiness. If you're reading this because something similar happened to you, or just out of curiosity, choose to be happy. Be the person you can be proud of, and move on to better things. Story 9. This just happened 2 days ago. I was in Florida on vacation with my girlfriend of 6 years, our 4-year-old son, her family, and a few of her friends. She had been taking pictures down at the beach all afternoon on her phone. We got back to the house we were staying at, and everyone was in the kitchen making dinner. I picked up her phone to text my family the pictures she had taken. As I was scrolling for the thread, I saw her ex-boyfriend's name. I opened the messages and the first thing I saw were videos of them masturbating that they had sent to each other. I yelled, "And what the F is this?" Her mom turned toward me asking what was wrong, and I loudly told her what I had seen. She admitted that she had gone out with some friends, gotten drunk, invited him out for a drink, and ended up doing coke all night. Then she said she got blackout drunk the next night and sent the videos. She claimed that was the only time she'd seen him. Of course, when she fell asleep, I went through her phone again. I found out she had seen him multiple times over the previous 2 months, and there were pictures of them together, posing like a cute couple on their dates. Her brother and dad were furious. I left the next morning. It ruined the vacation for everyone and completely shattered our family. Story 10. My wife had been texting a lot and got pretty evasive when I asked about it, though she smirked as if enjoying making me jealous. Yeah, she's that kind of person. One day I noticed she had left her email logged into my phone. I saw that she had booked a weekend Airbnb trip to a place in another state. The listing was clearly a quiet romantic getaway for two. That seemed suspicious. Since we were friends on Airbnb, I decided to keep an eye on it, thinking the owner might leave a review about her stay. Sure enough, the owner eventually did, mentioning how wife's name and guy not named me were wonderful guests and so on. Pretty high probability that the trip involved infidelity, right? My wife panicked, tried to get Airbnb to remove the review, changed her name on the site, and when that failed, deleted her account entirely. During a counseling session, I confronted her about it. She had a prepared story, claiming that she was supposed to go with a coworker, but that person's car broke down, so the coworker's boyfriend ended up tagging along, and they all stayed there together. She claimed it was just an honest mistake because the boyfriend signed the guest book. In hindsight, I'm pretty sure she was lying. We are no longer married. Story 11. Not my story, but one of my best mates. His girlfriend snuck a guy into their one-bedroom apartment while he was playing Xbox in the living room. I heard the argument through the mic after he heard a noise coming from the bedroom. He kicked her out and then came back to keep playing with us. After catching them in the act and kicking her out, he returned to the mic to tell us what had happened and that he was getting off the game. We encouraged him to stay on and talk it through with us since we were in different countries and couldn't be there in person. We were worried about him. Their relationship had been a bit rocky, but who would have thought she'd cheat, especially right in the next room? He's a great guy and didn't deserve that. Thankfully, he's now in a healthy relationship with a wonderful lady. Story 12. Not mine, but my brother's story. He was at a small party with 2 friends and his wife. He got tired and decided to head home. His wife stayed behind, giving some lame excuse and insisting on staying. He thought it was fine. His best buddy was there and would make sure she got home safely. He got in his car, pulled out of the driveway, but before getting down the block, he checked his rearview mirror and noticed that the room they had been in had gone dark. He had suspected for a while that something was off with her. They had a child together who had tragically passed away at the Sitters, ruled as SIDS. After the baby died, she had grown colder, and they never really worked through the loss together. Seeing the lights go out made something click in his mind, so he turned around. The house was dark, and the front door was still unlocked. He walked in and went to the only room with any light. He opened the door and found his best friend and another acquaintance double-teaming his wife. He hasn't really been the same since. Story 13. 2 weeks ago, I sent a message to a mutual friend asking to borrow a router. He didn't respond, but since he lived nearby, I figured I'd just stop by and pick it up. As I pulled up to his house and started down the long country driveway, it took a few seconds before I noticed my car parked there. I drive a company vehicle during the day. My heart sank, but I tried to rationalize it. They were friends and business partners. Maybe it was nothing. I got out of my van and looked up to see the other guy shirtless in his bedroom. At that point, my heart dropped into my stomach, and I was visibly shaking. I went inside and immediately headed upstairs. He was alone and dressed by then. I said, "I came to borrow the router. Also, have you seen my wife? Her car's here." He stammered out the worst excuse I'd ever heard, saying, "Huh? No, she was here at some point, though. I knew she was there. I just wanted him to admit it." I went downstairs, grabbed the router, and headed back to the van. That's when I finally saw my wife, topless, trying to sneak around the side of his house. And now here I am. Story 14. We were high school sweethearts and had been together for about 7 years. We went to college together, worked together, and basically spent 20 hours a day together. Then I left for the military, and suddenly I never received a single letter from her, nor did I hear anything about her from my mom, who was the only person writing me. Somewhere in the first 2 weeks out of 13, I convinced myself that she must have died and everyone was just sparing me the stress while I was in boot camp. I was completely shocked when I saw her at graduation. She seemed cold and distant, but I thought maybe it was because she'd recently gotten over a substance issue, or so I believed. I stayed with her for 10 days before leaving for training instead of staying with my mom, but I barely saw her. She claimed to be working 2 jobs and going to school. I tried to be supportive, but one night she didn't come home. We parted on weird terms, but she assured me that she was just sad to see me go. A few weeks into training, my family and girlfriend drove to see me, and we had a great 3-day visit. As they were dropping me off, I got a phone call from a good friend I'd known for years. He apologized, saying he felt terrible because she had told him that I broke up with her when I left so I could have guilt-free casual S, which was supposedly what I always wanted. He told me that her sister found out we were still together from a text she saw. I had always thought he was a jerk, but this was the behavior of a stand-up guy. She denied everything over and over. I made a bad call. I pulled the text from our shared account, back when that was possible, justifying it because her new boyfriend had already offered to send them to me. Even with the texts in hand, she kept denying it. Eventually, we both moved on, and now she's married to him. Story 15. I've shared this before, but it still stings. He changed his phone password, and I left it alone for months, but something just didn't feel right. One day, I unlocked his phone with my thumb and didn't even have to search. There was a messaging app open with a conversation between him and a girl he was planning to meet the next day. I sent him off to work without confronting him. Then I reset passwords through a long chain of emails until I finally accessed the one associated with the messaging app. Turns out he had been sending about 10,000 emails per year for the last 4 years of our relationship. He was living an entire second life, hiding it from everyone. Ironically, our relationship had never seemed stronger. We were even seeing a therapist once a week for 8 months to strengthen our communication. Clearly, he was hiding his issues from the therapist too. At first, I felt like my entire life was ruined. I remember thinking, what did I do to deserve this? Something inside me just snapped. I calmly went out, bought a giant coffee and some cardboard boxes, then packed all his stuff before he got home from work. I changed the locks and ended it. I moved his things into storage and left the key along with a passive-aggressive note. He left me a short note apologizing, admitting to what he had done, and taking responsibility. He even made a social media post telling everyone what he did and asked them to leave him alone and support me. We met weeks later to talk, and he didn't try to hide anything. He was completely transparent. I still loved him, and if he had come to me admitting he had a problem, I would have helped him seek therapy. It wasn't the addiction itself that hurt me. It was the lying. Story 16. Not my story, but a close friend's. She had an affair with another close friend and got caught because she lost an earring in the bed. After the entire friend group found out and both of them were heavily shamed, she claimed that he raped her. Everyone was stunned and didn't know what to do. To prove his innocence, he had to show his wife and the police home security footage of the woman riding him like a horse while he was handcuffed. So not only did he cheat and get accused of rape, but he also had to top it off by showing his wife AS tape with another woman. Story 17. Not my story, but my best friend's. It was his 30th birthday party, and he had a bunch of people over at his condo. He was pretty intoxicated, around a 7 out of 10, and spilled beer on his shirt, so he decided to change. He asked me to come with him because he wanted to ask me something in private. We went upstairs, and as he opened his bedroom door, we saw his boss going to town on his fiancée. I'll never forget the look on his face, her face, and the boss's face. The silence was finally broken by the classic, "This isn't what it looks like" routine. My friend responded with, "If this isn't what it looks like, why was his banana so far inside you?" His boss got dressed, grabbed a beer for the road, and I walked him out of the party. My friend came back downstairs, chugged a beer, and announced, "My now ex-fiancée was caught having sex with my boss. I didn't know she could do that. Usually she just lies there like a starfish. Let's get really fed up." He was a mess for a while after that, but luckily it was his condo, and he owned both cars. His fiancée had just quit her job to be a housewife. Instant karma. A year later, he started dating again, and I set him up with a coworker. They're great together now. As for the boss, he got fired after being caught sleeping with the owner's wife, and my friend got promoted. His ex-fiancée moved back in with her parents, giving up her lavish lifestyle. Last I saw her, she tried to flirt with me, but I shut it down. Story 18. Mine's a bit weird. It's not quite cheating, but it's definitely odd. In the gay community, apps are a big deal since bars are disappearing, making it harder to meet people. I've used apps for bears, burly, hairy guys with beards, for years. I chat with a lot of men. Some become friends, very few become more. A few years ago, I met a guy, and it was good for a while. I got rid of most dating profiles, only keeping the one I used to connect with friends across the country. I saw him on the app once and didn't care since he wasn't looking for hookups. A week later, he saw me on the app and got mad. We argued, but I explained why I kept it and offered to let him check my phone anytime. I thought we were good. Not long after, I struck up a conversation with someone visiting for work. He was good looking, but just wanted to be friends. Fantastic. We talked for months without it ever turning soul. Then out of nowhere, he told me he'd been chatting with a guy looking for S who sounded just like my boyfriend. He even pointed out the profile. It wasn't my boyfriend's account, but the description and distance were dead on. When I confronted my boyfriend, he denied it. I stayed off the app for a few days, but things didn't feel right, so I broke up with him. He cried, kept calling, and even claimed that I couldn't end the relationship without his agreement. Eventually, I decided to log back into the app to delete it, but I found a message from my friend saying, "It's not your boyfriend." I asked him, and he said it's not him. Don't do anything stupid. Then a new account messaged me saying it was the same friend, but he made a new profile. That didn't add up. Suddenly, his profile showed the same location as my ex's. It clicked. My friend and the random hookup profiles were all the same person, my ex. He had been catfishing me with multiple profiles to keep tabs on me. I contacted the app admins and they confirmed it. 9 different profiles, all his. He's been stalking me for 3 years now. Story 19. He wasn't my spouse, but he had proposed to me that morning. He told me he had to go into work to cover a shift, but when he didn't call me during his dinner break like he usually did, I got worried. Since he was a law enforcement officer, LEO, I called his phone. Someone else picked up and said, "The guy whose phone this is. Yeah, I think he went up to a room with his girlfriend. We have it down here waiting for him." They were at a hotel, turns out. He used the work excuse to sleep with another woman from the academy he had been seeing for a while. She was married. The next morning, he came to pick me up so we could take our parents to brunch and announce our engagement. I refused to go with him. In hindsight, I should have waited until we were at brunch and he had paid the bill to confront him for the free food, but I was young and dumb. Story 20. I went to a tournament in a different city for the weekend, but after some bad luck and losing, I decided to come home early on Sunday morning instead of the evening. It was my birthday and 2 days away from our 4-year anniversary. I walked into my home and found her with another guy in our bed. A tidal wave of emotions, fear, anxiety, anger, depression, confusion, and betrayal crashed over me, drowning me. I didn't know what to do, so I just said, "I'm done," and left. I drove to my mom's house to crash for a few days and get myself together. When I arrived, I found my mom high on Hero with my high school best friend. The tidal wave hit harder this time, and the drowning sensation became overwhelming. I lost it, punched my once best friend as hard as I could, and then just left. I found a real friend who let me stay with him for a while. I was emotionally numb for months, unable to process it all. Eventually, I got my life together and became a sous chef at one of the nicer restaurants in town. I've moved out and now live with my girlfriend of 1 year. It took time, but I'm in a much better place now. Story 21. My first long-term girlfriend and I planned to go to the same college. I got accepted, but had to start a semester later than her, meaning we would be slightly long distance for a few months. It wasn't too bad since we were only 2 hours apart, so visiting was easy. Still, our relationship struggled. One night, I got a phone call from her. It was clearly a butt dial. I heard her talking to some guy, but couldn't make out the words. I called her back, and she said she was in bed about to sleep. I mentioned the butt dial, and she said it was her friend Jack asking to borrow something. It felt odd, but I brushed it off. A couple of weeks later, I visited her and met a bunch of her friends, including a guy named Luke. After I got back, Luke messaged me on Facebook saying, "Look, man, I hate to be the one to say this, but I think you're a great guy and don't deserve this. She's been cheating on you with this guy pretty soon after she started here." Devastated, I called her and bluntly asked, "Are you cheating on me?" She sighed heavily and replied, "Well, at least I don't have to lie anymore." Turns out the guy's voice I heard on the butt dial wasn't Jack. It was the guy she was cheating with. I had trusted her so much that I took her word for it. Although it hurt, I was grateful to Luke for telling me the truth. Surprisingly, most of the people I met through her ended up siding with me after the
That should
breakup.
work, right?
When I started attending that college the next semester, they became
guys,
my support
this is
group,
gonna be a little
and many
crazy.
of them are still close friends to this day. Story 22. We were discussing divorce and were officially separated while he was still overseas on deployment.
Somehow,
He had flown back for 2 weeks
looks
of R&R
way wilder
and planned
like
to
this.
head back overseas because he requested to extend his time there. I thought we were going to talk things out, so I picked him up at the airport, but he was stone cold. We went back to our apartment and talked for about an hour, where he said
let
he
me do
thought
something
divorce
before we
was
do
best.
this. Let me
Then
turn
he
my master
suddenly
volume
mentioned he
down.
had to go. He
you
was
guys are
picking
gonna
up a
lose it.
friend at the airport and staying with her for the 2 weeks he was back. I was in shock. A few days later, I was on his computer printing a CD label when I noticed several hidden files in the art program. The folder was labeled with a woman's name. I opened it to find saved explicit emails and photos that dated back long before he and I started having trouble. It turned out he was having an affair with an NCO under his command. No wonder he wanted to extend his stay in the war zone. He was sleeping with her. He had even coordinated to fly her in 3 hours after him, so they could run away together after telling me it was over. I never saw it coming. Story 23. Things were rough between my long-distance girlfriend and me, but I wanted the relationship to work so badly. Money was tight, so my parents helped pay for a ticket so I could fly over to see her. A few weeks before the trip, my best friend passed away, and I was completely devastated. I reached out to my girlfriend for emotional support, but she was unusually difficult to reach. In desperation, I called her about 5 times in an hour. Finally, I got a response. A text that read, "This is her boyfriend. Will you please stop texting her?" Eventually, I got a call
Heavy
from
hit.
her, denying everything. At the time, I couldn't confirm whether she was actually cheating. Later, her
Doesn't
friends
this
told me
look
that she
super
was
modded
indeed
if you've
cheating
been away
on me.
from the game
That was a
for a
few
while?
years ago. I'm doing pretty well now, and I'm in a happy relationship. But even remembering that day still stings. Story 24.
AJ almost
This happened on
missed stream
St.
due to
Patrick's Day in
clutch.
2017.
Showed up right
My
on
wife
time.
said she wanted to go to a party with some friends from work, a couple we knew.
Now I just
I
gotta
told
find
her I
the
had
nether
finals
star.
on Monday, full-time dual bachelors and full-time work, so I was going to pass. I gave her some money and told her to have fun. That
Dude,
night,
I am
around
like
1
wrecking
a.m.,
some
she
of
stopped
the
responding
floor
to my
here
texts.
over time.
Normally, I don't text often to check on her because I appreciate the alone time, but something felt off. I checked the Find My Friends feature, which we both had on knowingly, and it was
I
turned
think
off.
this is a
I knew
start.
she didn't know how to do that,
I've
so
only
I
found
started
one
worrying.
so far.
I
What
grabbed
the
her
hell?
iPad to check the Find My iPhone feature, but the password was changed.
Did you
Same
guys
with
see
her
that
laptop.
Guardian tail sticking out of that pillar?
Suspicion grew, so I checked her Apple Watch, which had messages saved since the last sync. There was a long text conversation dating back a few weeks with an unsaved number. It was a single coworker of hers. The messages revealed that she was out with him
Okay,
and
that's
he had left
3.
his address. I drove to the address, and sure enough, my car was parked.
Is it a hammer that you're
I took
using?
a picture and sent it to
And then it
her,
had a hammer?
telling her to come
It's
out.
called the Maze.
She didn't. In
And
the heat of the moment,
it has a
I thought
stupid
about
enchantment
going in
called
there
Wind
and doing
Burst, which
something
I
stupid,
absolutely
but
flipping
I didn't
love.
want to end up in prison
It got
over her.
added in version
I just went home
1.21.
instead. She
The
called
tricky
later trying to
trials
deny
update.
it. I tried to see
And
it from her
it's
perspective,
just absurd.
but
There's
no matter
nothing
how I
like
looked at it, she was
but
the
it's
complete
so,
asshole
so
in this
good
story.
and so fun
Story
to play with.
25. Not
Oh,
my
guys,
story,
I have one more
but my
here. I think
uncle's.
the like 5th
My
Nether
uncle
Star is
got off
forfeit,
work
honestly.
early one Friday because they were ahead on
Wait,
schedule.
there's XP here?
When he got home, he went to his bedroom and noticed his wife was in the shower. Nothing unusual. Then her phone went off.
this
Since
it?
she worked at a hospital, he thought it might be important, so he checked the phone. It opened right up, and he saw outgoing pictures of her naked body being sent to an unknown
Guardians
number,
here, but-
along with incriminating messages.
Yeah, I think it's
He
Star
left
is
the
going
house for a few hours.
Guys, let's head
tried to
home.
commit suicide by taking 2
call it a
bottles
day.
of sleeping
I'm gonna
pills and
put
a
some
fifth
more.
of Jack
Well,
Daniels.
not this.
Instead of dying, he blacked
3B
out.
and
When he came back home,
Shaders.
somehow he got his
How many
hands
winners
on
did
a
I
loaded
find?
9mm pistol with 15 rounds. As
Should
he
try to do a
stumbled out
barrel
of the
roll
truck,
mod?
his wife was
Johnny, it
leaving the
looks
house
so
to get into the
sick.
car with her
Barrel
friend.
mod.
My uncle
I do
opened
think
fire.
like it's
6
intense for
glancing
streaming
shots,
though.
one
If
shot
you're
through
not
the
playing,
lower jaw,
it's like a bit
and 8
heavy
shots
to look
into
at.
the dirt.
Do
The
you
police
have a
arrived and
Witherspoon
found him
farm or
with the
just
gun
kill
in
them
his
naturally?
mouth,
Yeah, I have a
repeatedly
Witherspoon
pulling the
farm.
trigger.
Pretty
They
basic
handcuffed him and took him to
ENX04
jail.
thing.
He got 1 year for shooting his
I love
wife
that ENX04
and 15
farms
years,
are now
3 5-year
basic, although
sentences
they're pretty
for
advanced.
shooting her in front of the kids. Story 26. He told me he was helping his grandma retile her bathroom because she had fallen ill and was
Okay,
stressed
let's
about it
teleport
not
to
being
starter
finished
house.
that day. I was at work, so I couldn't help anyway.
That should
But I
take a
said,
second
sure,
because
no
Starter
problem.
House has the longest
About an
wires.
hour later, my mom took my brothers out to a
Better
restaurant,
Pulse, welcome to the stream,
and
by
they
the way.
walked in
Thank
to
you for
see my
being here.
then
And
boyfriend
DK
making
Teddy,
out with
thank
a
you for the
girl I
follow.
worked with. The same girl who claimed she hated him for various reasons. When my mom confronted them, he actually told her that this girl was his sick grandma.
Oh, guys, let's go
My
to
mom
the,
sarcastically
into the Hall of
agreed,
Fame.
noting
like,
that his grandma
the
was
entrance that we
22,
don't
wearing a halter top and
normally use.
jeans. My mom called them
I
out
think a
and
lot of
then
people
called me.
don't know this one
After
exists.
work, I went to my apartment, gathered his belongings, bagged them up, and
Guys,
politely
this is
dropped
a pretty
them off
wild
at his
room,
real
but
grandma's
once
house.
a year,
I laughed and
I go
said my
through my
man
world.
went on a date
George
without
Gaming,
me.
thank you for the follow.
My ex and I are
Once
both
a year,
men,
I go through my
so the
world
fact that
and
he
I
cheated
clean
with a
up
woman threw me
all
for
the
a
sugar
loop.
books that were left behind.
I was more
so
upset
in
that
this
he
room,
lied,
I make
and even more
artist
so
image
because
out of
she knew
those.
we were dating the entire time.
The first
She
year we
later
did that,
told me she
1 year
had
anniversary of the
fun
world,
being
we
the
made
other
that
person
flower down there.
because it meant she didn't
And
have
then the
to commit
second
to
year, we
anyone.
made this mask.
Story
And
27.
the third year,
I was visiting a good friend who
we
had
made
just
this
had a
vortex.
baby,
This room is
helping
not
her
completely
out for a few
finished, by the way.
days.
So maybe
When
we'll,
I came home, I saw my
we'll have
husband's
to
car
work
there.
on decorating a little bit.
I walked in calling
sometime
out,
soon as well.
"Hey babe, I'm home." Hello? There was no answer, but all the lights were
Replace
on
all the
and
gray
dishes were on
stone
the
books
table.
with gray sugar
It
books.
felt weird.
Absolutely
I started
not.
walking down the hallway toward our bedroom, getting worried that something might have happened to him. Suddenly, he burst out of our room completely naked, saying, "Hey," like everything was normal. For a split second, I smiled, thinking maybe he was being goofy.
We have a
or
banger song
planning
to
some
finish up the
kind of
stream. I want to
surprise.
thank you guys so much for being
Then I
here.
saw her
I hope you all enjoyed
through
it.
the
If you want to be in
bedroom
the
door
book,
behind him, naked and flushed,
now is a good time
holding a
to
blanket
get your
cover
name in the
herself.
chat. We're
It
gonna
was
put
his
Chester
much
Tube
younger
in.
coworker,
We're gonna
who
put
was
Lance
also
in.
my friend.
We're gonna put
I
Drewny in the
remember
book
hearing
for
my own
Drowning. I have
heartbeat
no
while I
idea how
stood
to
there,
pronounce your
frozen.
name, but a
I
man
walked back down the
tries.
hallway
We're
to
gonna
confront
put
him,
Dagger Cat
and he was clearly very drunk.
001 in there.
Not unusual
So
for him
Nancy
on
makes it in.
weekends. He
We'll
initially
get
slurred
AJ and
something
WoW
like,
in there.
"I thought you'd be cool with it." What the hell? Then he changed
Dark
tactics and had the
WoW.
nerve to stand naked in our
And
kitchen
then we'll
and say,
put me
"Oh, you
Nina in
think
there
I
as
had
well.
S with her?"
We have
No, I didn't
XD,
have S with her.
QRKK.
Spoiler. Yes, he did.
And
Feeling
then Katana,
speechless
I want to
and needing
believe,
be
but
anywhere
holy
else,
hell, your
I
name.
left for a
Dark
while.
Katana.
When
Your
I
name
came
is
back,
terrible
the
at
night
the time.
didn't get any better. The saddest part,
Double iron
I
goes
wasn't
in.
even early.
Moses Mom
He just got
rating in.
drunk and forgot what
The
day I was
exit
coming
song.
home.
We're
Even
doing a
sadder, I
past the
ended up
bus
giving her a ride
Bethlehem.
home.
I have
The
a
saddest
thank you
part
to
of all,
Racing to Lunch. Have a great stream.
I
Thank you
stayed
for
and
checking
tried to
in.
work it out for 2 more
We're gonna
years.
put you in the name.
Take it from a fool.
Anybody coming in
Cheaters don't
through the raid,
change. Story
welcome
28.
to my channel. My
I
name is
lived with my
Looney. I'm
girlfriend
gonna
during
rate
our
you
last
guys
year of university.
out to another
We
stream
had an
because we're
apartment
literally
together, and we
right
only
now
had
putting
one
some
side
names in the
table
book
next to our bed
to
with
call it
2
a day.
chargers to
Avery
share.
Bob goes in.
Suspicion started
We
when she
put
stopped
Larson in
charging
there.
her phone at night
We're gonna
and
put
kept it on
Black
her side
Belt
of the bed.
MC in there.
She began getting agitated when we
Dude,
were
that's
heading
such
to
a
a
good
mutual
song.
friend's house, but weren't getting there fast enough.
Such a good
This
edit
friend
of
was
a
someone
song
I had
too.
introduced her to. Then his
And
name
the
kept
stream rate
popping up
happens.
on her
We'll
phone.
put Josh Gaming
When
in
I
book.
questioned her, she said, "We're planning your
Reaper makes it
birthday.
in.
Don't ruin it."
Gravestone's
One
Corner.
day she wasn't home, so I went out onto the balcony and noticed I could
Jonathan,
see his house from there.
Samuel
Her car
makes
was
it in.
parked outside. I called
have
and
Seamus
asked where
Kelly.
she was.
I hope
and she
I
claimed to
got
be
it
on
right now.
campus and said she might just stay in her office for the night.
Naomi,
She
good to
moved
see
out
you. Hope
shortly
you're doing
after.
well.
I kept the dog we
We're
had
in the
just
tune
gotten.
book.
To this day, that dog is the only good thing that came out of that relationship.
DK Teddy makes it in
Story
as well.
29. Not my story, but my
Dude,
older
I'm always
sister's.
banging out to the drum.
I was around 20, and she invited me over for drinks to celebrate
Thank
her
you for being
birthday.
here.
I was
Griff
pretty close
wasn't
with my
in yet.
brother-in-law at the time. At the party, one of his friends was being
999
really touchy with my
Sharky, good to
sister.
see you.
After a few
And with
drinks,
that,
I
guys,
had
we're
enough
signing
and
off
tossed the
for
guy around a
September
bit, telling him to keep his hands to himself.
2025.
My brother-in-law calmed me
Thank
down,
you so much for watching.
saying it was
We're gonna
nothing
put the
since
book
that guy was his best friend.
over
Fast
here in
forward
the
a month,
library.
and my brother-in-law
And then
found a
we
bunch of
continue our
texts
granny
between them.
business tomorrow. Guys, if
Turned
you're
out
watching
they had
on
been
YouTube,
having an
thank you
affair
for showing
months.
up with
He moved out, and the other guy moved in almost immediately. I ended up helping my brother-in-law through a lot of drunken nights where he cried uncontrollably. The whole situation was a mess, and I'm still closer to my brother-in-law than my sister to this day. Story 30. My ex-husband used to keep an emergency $5 bill in his wallet, folded up and tucked into a side pocket. He openly told me it was there and would remind me to take it if I needed it. Over the years, I used and replaced it a few times, usually when I needed cash for food at work. I never snooped through his wallet because I believed that if I felt the need to, our relationship was already in trouble. One day I had a doctor's appointment and needed $5 for the copay, so I grabbed his wallet and took out the $5 bill. Along with it came a small piece of paper with the name of a shady hookup website, a username, and a password. I went to my computer, typed in the website, and looked up his account. His profile said he was available for whatever between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. on the days I worked. I worked nights from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The profile didn't have a picture, probably because he didn't know how to upload one. So I kindly uploaded a nice, flattering photo of him. When I later confronted him, he denied everything for hours, saying it was just a joke his friends played. I let him sweat before pulling out printed versions of the email conversations linked to that shady website. Just for fun, I also used the username and password combo as an email address and found more incriminating messages. I never put the $5 back because screw him, but I did put the username and password back in his wallet because I'm thoughtful. When I went to my doctor's appointment, I was 15 minutes late. My blood pressure was so high that my doctor wanted to put me on medication. I calmly explained that I had just found out my husband was cheating on me 15 minutes earlier, so he let it slide and asked me to come back for a follow-up in a week. Story 31. I woke up one morning to my girlfriend receiving a random text message from a girl she worked with. The message itself wasn't particularly suspicious, but there were no previous messages to give it context, which was weird. My girlfriend acted just as confused as I was. That morning I was feeling really sick and wanted to skip my class, but she was unusually insistent that I go. On the way there, I ended up stuck on the highway, unable to pull over quickly enough, and threw up all over myself in the car. When I finally pulled over to clean up a bit, I was absolutely hysterical and decided to head back home since I clearly couldn't make it to class. I called her to let her know and she said, "Oh, well, I'm in the next town over getting brunch with the girl from the text message earlier." That was a red flag. When I got home, I showered, and before even putting clothes on, I checked her call and text records. Turns out she had been messaging that girl all night long. I confronted her and she admitted they had been getting closer and had kissed. I was so physically and emotionally drained that I just stayed in bed the rest of the day. I had to be at work at 4:30 the next morning, but I came back before she woke up and started packing my stuff to move out. The worst part? The girl she cheated with was a friend from work, someone we had hung out with multiple times. I had given her rides, smoked her out, and was cool with all her friends. The whole time everyone knew they were hooking up behind my back. Story 32. My dad was very ill and passed away. I was pregnant and at the hospital dealing with everything that comes after a death. I couldn't remember my social security number, pregnancy brain, and I sent my husband home to get it. Hours passed and he didn't come back or answer his phone. I told the hospital I'd return with the information and went home to see what was going on. When I got to the door, I couldn't open it because our couch was pushed against it. He was yelling at me from inside. Finally, he opened the door and I saw drugs everywhere.
Chad, hi, welcome.
He was doing
Hi,
drugs
welcome
even
to-
though he was on
Happy
probation.
Tuesday. It is
We got into a
Tuesday
huge
today.
fight. Then I found an
Sorry,
underage girl
I-
hiding in the
I-
closet.
the
For
button
some twisted
got
reason,
messed up.
I
I'm
stayed.
pressing random button. It was
I
the
went
wrong
through
button. I was
therapy,
trying to press
only
it.
to find out
Stop.
2 years later
Hi.
that he had been
Welcome.
cheating throughout our entire
Yeah, not for real this
relationship.
time. Oh my God,
That was
so
the
many
breaking
people slept
point.
before I did anything.
I calmly packed his
Hold on.
things,
Even
filed
before
for
we
divorce
started
that week,
streaming Salio
and
with
never looked
Prime,
back.
even
It's been a
before
year since the
51
divorce,
minutes ago, I just
and I
started
ended up
streaming
dating
Salio
sooner than I
coming in with the
expected.
Prime already. Thank you so
Now
much.
I'm madly
Hi.
in love with a
Hi,
man
oh my
I've
God,
known
thank
since high
you.
school,
And then Heather with the
and he treats
14.
me and my daughter
Bunny,
incredibly well.
Bunny with the Prime.
Don't stay in a
Thank you.
relationship
Bless your
filled with
heart.
that
So
kind of
sweet.
hurt.
Kisses.
There's
and
so
then
much
here,
better
we get
out
a real-
there.
a
Story
real-
33.
a
I have
sprinkle.
2 stories. The first one
Hi.
was with my
Oh my God,
very
what is
first
it, guys?
boyfriend.
We're a little late
One
to
day I got a
streaming.
text from an unknown number that said,
Oh my God, the most-
"Is this all you have to
We
work
went
with?"
over on our
Accompanied by a
vampires
picture of me naked in the
recording
shower,
today, just a little
taken
bit.
from
It was a
behind.
good one.
I was
It was
horrified.
crazy
I
stuff
called the
happening.
number,
Again,
and a
not as
girl
crazy as the
answered.
last one. I'm gonna
She
take,
told
you
me
know,
she had been
temper
sleeping with my
expectations.
boyfriend for a year,
It wasn't
and he
as
took the
intense
picture
as
to
the
prove to
last
her
one, but
that
it's
she
more
was
of a-
hotter than me.
a
Then I found out
preparation.
he had been
We're doing
molesting me in my
preparation
sleep
for,
and
an
recording it
all-out
to send to
battle
her.
death coming up.
Everyone
We'll
in
see,
our
who
friend
knows?
group
But it
knew.
was some good
The second
lore,
story was
some
more
good
subtle.
reveals,
My
and
next
you know what?
boyfriend never let me know
Good
his
stuff
friends'
happened.
names,
I can't
where they
wait to show
live,
you.
or what they
We're
did
probably
when they
gonna do
hung
a
out.
double recording,
Every
actually.
Tuesday, he would be gone all day,
So we'll probably do late
sometimes
stream
staying
on
overnight,
Thursday, too.
never
We'll do
replying to
double
my
recording,
messages or
so
answering
you
his
can have
phone.
extra,
He would also get mad if I
footage
needed the
for
car,
people who's going to
even
the
though
car.
it was in my
So it's gonna
name
be a
and I paid
double
for it.
vampire
One day his
recorded
phone
week.
rang while he
I
was in
can't
the
wait.
shower, and he asked me to
It's
see
gonna
who
be-
it
it's gonna
was.
be a good one.
I
It's
saw
gonna
a
be a good one.
conversation
Hold on,
that seemed a
Bubbles,
bit too friendly,
Hi.
but when I
Hi.
went back to
Hi.
check it again,
Quicksilver
it
from
was
Prime.
gone. We eventually broke up for
Quicksilver.
unrelated reasons.
Take a sprinkle of
Later, I
more.
found
Thank
out
you.
through a government form that his friend from those weekly visits was actually a woman.
Thank you, girl.
Her baby looked a lot like him. Story 34.
Hi.
I walked into a bar
What's up?
one night
Thank
and
you so
had
much
this
for sending
overwhelming
everyone.
feeling
Oh
that
my
my
God, it's a long
boyfriend was
time.
there
Prime,
with
you
another
are the
girl.
best. I will never forget this.
As I made my way to
Thank you
get
so
a
much.
drink,
I think the
I
Lord
turned
behind
around
each
and saw him sitting
We have
across
some
from a
good
girl.
lore behind each
I
guy.
thought,
We have some-
whatever, they're
everybody
probably
has a
just
different
friends.
backstory and
But then
lore.
I saw
Everyone
him
has
lean
some good
across the
old
table and
stories
kiss
to
her,
tell. It's been
so
some good stuff,
passionately.
man.
When he leaned back, he saw me standing there, staring at him. He whispered something to her, then got up and walked out alone. I followed him outside and, staying calm, asked for my stuff back from his place so I wouldn't have to see him again. He refused and started screaming and shouting at me. He walked away and I almost let it go, but something told me to follow him to his place, where he swore he wasn't going. A few minutes later, both he and the girl showed up. I asked once more for my things and even spoke to the girl. Really politely, still staying calm. Then he snapped, hit me, pushed me, picked me up, and swung me. I slammed into a big metal post. After that, I just walked away and called the police. He came after me with my stuff, but now we have a court date coming up regarding the assault. Story 35. I was working a midnight shift when I suddenly had a gut feeling that something was wrong. About 30 minutes into my shift, I asked a co-worker to cover for me and drove home. As I pulled into the driveway, I looked through the bay window and saw my now ex-wife cuddled up with a guy on my couch. Acting like an idiot, I started revving my engine and grabbed my steel coffee mug with my left hand, even though I'm right-handed, and tried throwing it through the bay window.
Oh my God, what a day.
It barely went 5 feet. My wife came out the door screaming, "No, no, no," with her hands up, while the guy bolted out the back door and sprinted to his car. I just stood there while he took off and then walked inside. Later, I found out that she had been sleeping with him for 14 months right under my nose. It was one of the worst nights of my life. 4 years later, I'm remarried to a wonderful woman, and we have a little boy of our own. Sometimes bad things can lead to amazing new chapters. Story 36. This happened years ago, but the aftermath lasted for a long time. I was an athlete in my 20s, playing basketball overseas for nearly a decade. I would spend most of the year overseas and come back to the States between seasons. One time I was flying back to the States and planned to visit my brother in Denver before heading home. On the 12-hour flight, I got a bunch of voicemails saying my brother and his girlfriend had an emergency and went to New Mexico. His friend Andy would pick me up and take me to his place until my brother got back. Andy turned out to be a girl, and I was instantly smitten. We hit it off immediately. We eventually got married and had a child, and I thought we had the perfect life. Great relationship, good family dynamic, and even a healthy S-life. Then my mother's side of the family moved closer, including my cousin Donnie. He was married to his high school sweetheart. We hung out often, and he liked going to bars and strip clubs. My wife and I would go with him sometimes since we were pretty open and secure in our relationship. One night, my phone rang, and my wife answered. After a long phone call, she confronted me, accusing me of cheating. Apparently, a girl had called saying I was leaving my wife for her and our baby. I was shocked and clueless. We invited the girl over to clear things up. When she arrived, she immediately said I wasn't Rusty. Turns out, Donnie had been cheating on his wife and using my name as an alias. We straightened it out, but my wife insisted that Donnie had to come clean to his wife, or she would do it. Eventually, he told her, and things seemed to calm down. Then the girl started calling my parents' house, looking for Rusty again. My dad eventually got involved and set her straight, but my wife lost it when she found out Donnie hadn't completely dealt with the situation. Eventually, Donnie's wife found out everything, and they divorced. After that, my wife and I patched things up and moved on. I decided to retire from basketball after a knee surgery, planning to surprise my wife by flying home earlier than expected. I took a taxi from the airport, excited for some romantic bliss. Instead, I walked into our master bedroom to find a random guy asleep next to my wife. Devastated, I grabbed some clothes, took pictures as proof, woke my daughter up, and drove to my parents' house. To this day, my ex-wife never explained why she cheated or who the guy was. Now I'm remarried and life is good, but I still sometimes think about how unexpectedly my life fell apart. It hits me at random times, like when catching up on TV shows or reading stories like this. Story 37. I had to unexpectedly go to work on a Sunday. My spouse suddenly announced she had plans to go to a big city about 100 miles away with friends, expecting me to handle childcare. Since I had to work, she took our 3-year-old and left on foot, as she refused to get a driver's license until after we separated. After a while, I realized she was missing. I searched all the places she would usually go, and even checked with her supposed alibis. No one had seen her. Just as a police officer arrived to take a missing person report, she sent an "I'm okay" text, so the officer left. Later, she called and asked for a pickup from a grocery store, saying she had been shopping for 45 minutes. When I got there, her cart was nearly empty, and our kid was eating a warm cheeseburger. She claimed she had walked to get it, but the distance was way too far. When I pointed this out, she said one of her alibis had given her a ride, but I had already confirmed she wasn't with that person. The next day, my phone asked for a review of a hotel I had never been to. Turns out she had logged into my phone months ago,
Nossa, que legal.
and even though
Seu-
she changed her
a habilidade
password,
do Machado-
Google Maps still sent
Não, ele
notifications.
faz tudo, então.
I asked my kid for details, and she innocently described a man named John with a white
ia dar
car, a
desinformação aí.
hotel room, and imitated the
Não,
noises her
porque
mom
foi
made
achismo
with
mesmo, né,
him.
porra.
The
É, já
noises.
ia dar desinformação
It turned out
aí, né?
my kid had been using the Android phone while they were having S, and the GPS picked up the location. I started collecting data from my
Eu,
wife's
quando
devices
passo
and found over
mentirinhas online.
6,000 pages of text between her and 4 different men. She was cheating on them too, all while berating me for being lazy
vocês estão
despite
vendo
my
o que eu tô
working
fazendo?
full-time, going to school,
Ninguém fala.
and taking care of almost all childcare. That was the end of our marriage. Story 38. Not mine, but my dad's story. He caught my mom cheating with my brother. When I was 8, my half-brother and my mom started spending a lot of time together. We would go to his house a few times a week when my dad was at work. They would spend hours in his bedroom with the door locked, supposedly playing games in their bathrobes. One weekend, my mom was supposed to go on a girls' vacation, and I was going to stay with my dad. My dad seemed suspicious because we drove around all night, looking for something he wouldn't explain. Eventually, we found her truck at a bar in town. He told me to stay in the car while he went inside. A few minutes later, he stormed out, dragging my mom behind him, with people chasing after them. Apparently, he caught my mom and brother making out in the bar and lost it,
Isso.
beating the crap out of my
Esse é o
brother.
meta.
The commotion attracted attention,
Esse é
and
o
the
meta
cops were
secreto que eu
called.
acabei de inventar.
My mom ripped me out of the
Eu acho
car, and my dad let her take me in case he got arrested.
Ok, ok.
He drove
Não,
off,
não vamos
never getting
precisar.
caught,
Beleza, beleza.
while my mom
Deu
dumped
certo,
me at my
então
aunt's
eu
house in the middle of the
fazer.
night and went back to my brother's place. My mom thinks I was too young to remember, but I do, and I've never forgiven her for the damage she caused. Story 39. It started with small, suspicious things,
Não, também.
like him accidentally butt-dialing me from clubs when he had texted earlier, saying he was in bed. He'd pull all-nighters at the library, even though he was failing most of his classes, and he never wanted to study with me when I offered. When I confronted him, he always made up some excuse. And being young, 18 at the time, I believed him. Then it escalated. Girls at parties started telling me they'd seen him being intimate with other girls. When I confronted him, he insisted those girls were just jealous and trying to break us up. I continued believing his lies for a few more years until I found screenshots of naked girls on his phone. When I confronted him about it, he broke up with me, claiming I was too high maintenance and causing fights all the time. Not long after, he got a new girlfriend and immediately tried to cheat on her with me. Looking back, I definitely dodged a bullet. Story 40. Not my story, but definitely my fault. When I was about 4, I had a babysitter who was a work friend of my mom's. Occasionally, she would have a friend come over to help out while babysitting me. He was a super nice guy who liked playing SNES with me. A few days after one of those babysitting nights, I got sick, and my mom had to take me to her workplace. While there, I saw my babysitter and very loudly asked, "When are you and guy friend's name going to come see me again?" I was completely oblivious to the fact that her longtime boyfriend worked in the next cubicle. Turns out, cool SNES guy was not her boyfriend. My innocent comment sparked a massive social explosion at the office. An intense fight broke out, resulting in tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment being destroyed. 5 people were fired and 3 others resigned. Apparently, her flings extended beyond just one case of
Calma aí, não, deixa eu te
infidelity.
mostrar, né? Deixa eu te
I might
mostrar,
have been
né?
a kid,
Me dá esse chapéu
but
aí.
part of me is a little
não,
proud
tem
of
aqui.
causing that much
Olha
chaos.
isso.
Story 41. Oh boy, this one's wild.
Vai, me
A
bate
few
aí, me
years
bate
back,
aí,
I was
me
a
bate
university
aí.
student, and so was she.
Entendi. É só mesmo
We'd
que
often
eu
go
vi.
back to her place during the day while her dad was at work to get freaky. I'm into toys and ropes, and she was down with it, so I had a literal Essa bag. For a few weeks, I'd been getting weird vibes. After one of our sessions, while I was cleaning up, I found her phone and saw texts from her ex about meeting up later. Turns out he knew about me
E aperta
and had been
F3D.
seeing
Fica
her when I was
escondido
in class.
atrás. Olha
I
isso.
confronted her and ended it right there.
A hitbox fica
She was
escondida
still
atrás do
naked and
chapéu, cara.
crying, but I was pissed. I grabbed my bag and started to leave. Just as I was about to walk out, the door opened, and I came face to face with her dad.
sei.
For the
com
first
certeza.
time, instinct took
Foi
over,
sim,
and I
foi
did
sim.
what seemed right at the moment.
Foi, viado, claro que
I
foi.
shook his hand and introduced myself while carrying a gym bag full of S toys. He looked at me, then passed me to his crying daughter and just said, "Well, I guess we'll give this one a pass. Maybe next time we can meet properly."
Se eu perder, eu vou...
I replied, "There won't be a next time," and walked out. Story 42. Not my story, but my husband's experience with his ex. His ex had a severe mental health breakdown and was bedridden for months. My husband almost lost his job because he stayed home so often to take care of her. Eventually, she started feeling better and leaving the house. Then she was almost never home always out with
Fazer
her
uma
new friends.
Marina
He and
napolitana
his
aqui pra
friends
gente.
started seeing pictures of her frequently with one guy in particular. One night he got off work early and came home to find something seemed off. He looked through the window and saw her cuddled up with that guy on the couch, wearing my husband's sweatpants. He walked in and things got awkward. The guy quickly left. His ex made up some excuse about the guy needing a shower after work and not having spare clothes. A few days later, she didn't come home at all. This happened repeatedly. One day, my husband decided to take
E
a
aí,
week-long
samurai?
cross-country road trip to clear his mind.
Quanto,
When he returned,
quanto por quanto
he found that
fosse
she had
a
packed up their
arena?
entire house, taken his dog, and left. Some problems resolve themselves, though sometimes they take your dog with them. Story 43. My ex-wife started acting suspicious, hiding and locking her
Vamos fazer
phone
no,
for months.
no topo do Nether?
I knew something was off when she started staying out all night and ignoring my calls. Anytime I confronted her, she would blow up on
Bora.
me and accuse me of cheating.
daí ninguém
One
precisa
day, she
acontecer
called me
nada.
at work and said she wanted a divorce. I just said, okay. The next day, her boyfriend served me with divorce papers. That afternoon, I went home to gather my hunting and fishing gear so she couldn't take it in the divorce. When I walked in, they were both naked in our bed. I didn't make a scene. I just grabbed my clothes and my stuff and left.
Não,
The
pode
next day,
botar
I went
assim,
to a
pode
lawyer
botar
and told him to
assim.
give
Eu vou
her
botar usando, né,
everything.
porque eu
The
vou fazer
house,
isso.
the boat, the cars, everything except my hunting and fishing gear and my clothes. 2 weeks later, I quit my job of 10 years, changed my phone number, and never looked back. I've never seen her since. She married the guy a month and a half later. That year was the hardest of my
Cara, uma
life,
dúvida. Além
but
de
now I'm
você
doing
do
great.
oculto,
I
mais
found a
alguém
new
dos
job,
distritos passou
met an
por Daenerys?
amazing woman,
Não,
and just
mano, foi
bought
só
a new
eu.
house. I basically
só os dois,
rebuilt my
ninguém
life from the
das
ground
40
up.
pessoas que tava
Story
lá. Não, quem
44.
passou foi
My ex of
fui
3
eu,
years was a
Oculto,
total
Aster,
leech.
o
We lived together for a year.
Spornelius,
And during that time, I was working
Luke,
60 to 70 hours a
Wabo,
week between 2 jobs, while he could barely
Remy,
manage 35 hours.
Morgana.
The only car we had was mine, and he used it while I was at work.
Morreu.
I noticed
Morreu,
red flags,
né?
but
E
didn't
agora-
want to believe
e
he'd be
agora
that
escuta
awful.
de Harvey.
He changed the lock on his phone after we had
Harvey
always
barra
shared each other's
Harmony.
codes. My car started needing twice as much gas
Judy.
each week, which didn't make sense. Finally, I had enough. I pulled the phone records
Otto
for his
também passou,
phone,
né?
which I paid for,
O Otto
and a
passou.
friend showed me how to highlight repeating numbers.
O cara,
I found
o
proof that he was
Dolly, né? O
constantly
cara que faz o
texting
Epsilon,
someone,
passou também.
especially while at work, despite always claiming he was too
Kate
busy to
também
talk.
passou,
I
o Dr.
called
Almeida
and
também
confronted him
passou.
while he was at work with my car.
Green,
I
Green
bluffed,
passou também,
saying I
verdade.
could read all the messages
Lunar,
between him
né?
and the other
Lunar
woman.
passou.
He immediately
Segredo,
confessed.
o NCQ
I told him
passou.
I'd be at his work in 30 minutes to get my keys, and my roommate drove me there. When we
Já, já
arrived, he
falei,
tried to
Judy.
make a scene, but my roommate,
Presente passou
a
também,
built
né?
6
Presente
feet
tá
3
passou,
inches
passou, tá jogando de
ex-basketball
Aspen
player,
agora.
quickly shut him down and made him hand over my keys. We left. At 4 a.m., he called me from the convenience store across the street from his work, crying and begging me to turn his phone back on so he could call for a ride since it was
Pô, os
freezing
caras
outside.
passam pelo mais
I
difícil e não
didn't.
quer jogar no server
Story
de verdade.
45.
Quê?
I was waiting
Mas
for
tá
my
todo mundo-
husband to
de todas
come
as
home
pessoas
after
que eu
working
falei, a
away,
única pessoa que
which
não
was
tá
part of
entendendo
his
isso.
job. He would come home for weekends and then leave on Sunday nights.
Porque ele tava fazendo os outros
Our
bagulho,
marriage
né?
had been
Ele
rocky,
eventualmente vai
and I
voltar,
knew he
mas
had been talking
não
to a
pra-
friend of mine, supposedly just to
Yeah,
vent.
maybe that might be a
One
good
night, he
idea.
wasn't answering his phone, and it was past
yeah.
11 p.m.
By the way,
I was getting
also,
frantic,
if you don't
considering
know,
calling the police.
Drago's
A
here.
more suspicious friend of mine drove past that
I
woman's
believe the
house
first time when he
and
showed
saw his
up,
car parked in the
was,
driveway.
while I was
She
streaming
came over,
Christmas Town,
bundled me into her
and,
car, and drove me there. I
he
kept
came up
making
with
excuses
the
for him the whole way.
genius idea
When we arrived, the house was dark, and his car's bonnet was
using that
cold.
lava
He had been
pond
there a while.
that's
My
there
friend
at
knocked on the
Christmas
door,
time,
and the bedroom light turned on.
and
The woman opened the
just
door in a dressing gown, and I
not
pushed past her
different.
into the room, where I found my husband in her bed. The woman
Genius
looked
idea.
smug, and I slapped
I
her.
must say.
They had been gaslighting me for months,
bow
making
my
me
head to
believe
that.
I was
That's
paranoid and crazy. The
correct,
worst
John,
part
man.
was that they both knew my first husband had left me for another woman on our first
Oh,
wedding
Christmas
anniversary,
Town.
and they
Some
promised they would
genius, yeah.
never hurt me like that. It was the most painful
And
betrayal of my
I
life.
hope we get
We had
to,
3 young children, and that
go
weekend
back
felt like my
there.
life ended.
Actually make some
9
footage
years
by
have passed,
December.
but I still can't think about it without
Although-
feeling anger and heartbreak.
I don't
He
know
died 6 months
how
later in a car crash before we were divorced.
much progress
I
there should
received
be,
nothing to
because
help care for our
I have
kids.
No idea if
He had left
I can
everything to
even
her,
manage to be
and I was
back
too broken to fight it. But I survived.
by then.
I met a wonderful man,
Because I still
and we're
have a
getting
lot of
married
work
in
ahead of
18 days. He's helping me work through my trust issues, and for the first time in a long while, I feel loved and safe. At 50, I finally feel more in control of my life than I ever did before. I will never forget that weekend or the way people suddenly came forward after it happened, sharing their suspicions and stories of how those two had planned to ruin me. But I made it through, and I'm happier now than I ever thought I'd be. Story 46. This story is complicated and painful. When I was 13, I found out my mom was cheating on my stepdad, who had been my dad since I was 4. I was away at school camp and just had a gut feeling that something was off. My stepdad was also overseas for work at the time. When I got home, the house was empty, but the uneasy feeling lingered. I couldn't explain it, but I felt I needed to check my mom's messages, so I did while she was in the shower. I found texts proving she was cheating. I didn't want to believe it, so I wrote down the number. Later, I called it from my best friend's house, and a man with an Italian accent answered. I immediately hung up. For 9 months, I kept the secret to myself, checking her messages every morning while she showered. I developed a deep hatred for her, but didn't say anything because I didn't want my family to fall apart. The stress led to binge eating, severe depression, and panic attacks. Eventually, my stepdad found out after seeing an email, and they had a massive fight, breaking a chair. I asked my mom to take me to my friend's house, and on the way, I broke down and confessed that I knew. We cried together in the car for an hour. They broke up but continued living together, sleeping in separate bedrooms. In December, they tried getting back together, but in January, my stepdad went to Vietnam for a friend's wedding. When he came back, I got that same uneasy feeling again. This time, I found out he was having an affair with a woman from Vietnam. My mom discovered the affair a few weeks later, leading to another huge fight. This time physical, with my mom attacking him. They broke up again, but we all continued living together for another year. It was awful and traumatic, and I barely remember that time. I coped with the turmoil by developing an eating disorder, restricting, binging, and purging. I lost a lot of weight, and the following 6 years involved hospitalizations and treatment. After a year, they finally moved into separate houses. My brother and I stayed with my mom. She continued her relationship with the man she cheated with, while my stepdad developed an addiction to ice and ended up in and out of prison for 4 years. My mom eventually broke up with her affair partner, but during that time, I was extremely sick with anorexia and in and out of the hospital. She blamed the relationship's failure on my illness, saying that the stress of my health problems was too much for them. In reality, the guy was abusive to both me and my mom. She's since realized how toxic he was and hates him now. It was a traumatic period that shaped a lot of my teenage years, but I've managed to move forward and take care of myself.